My name is Sofia Ehrich, and I am an art historian, academic researcher, and curator of multisensory experiences. Right now, my main work is with the European-funded project Odoropa, which advocates for smells and smelling as important to Europe's cultural heritage. And today, I'm very excited to have Hana Tisserand with us, who is the co-founder and director of operations and communications at the Tisserand Institute, which is the global leader in evidence-based essential oil education. She oversees the creation of course content and curricula, moderates live webinars, and teaches her own introductory classes. She has been working at the Tisserand Institute for 8 years, but her love of science, essential oils, perfumes, and fragrances runs even deeper, as does her appreciation for fine teas and coffee. I can very much relate to the last point. So welcome, Hana, and thank you so much for agreeing to do the podcast.
Thank you so much, Sophia, for such a wonderful introduction and for inviting me. I'm very excited to talk to you today.
Great. So today, our main topics of discussion will be about educating about our olfactory sense and smell and how it relates to culture, smells as therapy, and also some aromatic chemistry and focus on anosmia. So
incredible.
A lot to cover in 40 minutes. So just to introduce, I'm really excited to have you, obviously, because I'm a current student of the Tisserand Institute. So I'm currently doing the aromatic chemistry diploma, and the education at the Institute is of course very rich and interesting. And so can you tell our audience a bit more about what the Tisserand Institute is and what it aims to achieve?
Okay, so the Tisserand Institute is an online education platform which allows us to really be global in terms of reach, and our focus is on essential oils themselves. So I like to put it as a holistic approach to the essential oils as substances, as tools, wherever you come from in terms of your practice of using essential oils, whether you are an aromatherapist, whether you are a perfumer, whether you are a cosmetic formulator, whether you are just a generally interested person who likes to work with essential oils which have become ubiquitous, you can come to us for the information that you need about those essential oils. We always want our information to be evidence-based. We bring our receipts. We always tell you why we tell you the things that we tell you. And that's kind of the place that we start with is, okay, what do you need to know about essential oils before you start using them? What do you need to be aware of, whether it's in terms of safety, whether it's how they behave when you create a cosmetic product? Because with the revolution of green cosmetics, people turn to naturals, and essential oils are naturals, and they can be both active ingredients in terms of their properties, and we'll talk about that later, as well as their fragrance. So what do you as a person need to know about essential oils before or as you use them? That's kind of where we start from. We launched our first, the very first offering was a series of webinars in 2014, but the current iteration, which is certification courses with the sort of cohort-based learning that we have right now, that started in 2016 with our very first essential oil safety masterclass. There was a previous Tisserand Institute, which was a physical institute in the UK, in London, which was active in the 80s and the 90s. That one was focused on aromatherapy, and that was a physical place. So people would go there, learn not only about essential oils, but also how to talk to clients, how to do massage therapy, how to be a practitioner of aromatherapy. But the current Tisserand Institute, the current digital incarnation of Tisserand Institute is focused on essential oils themselves. So that's kind of the philosophy behind what we do.
Okay, and that leads really well into our next questions, which is this evolution that has been happening, I guess, since, well, before the 90s, but there was a big burst in the 90s. I would say only because I know my mom was into aromatherapy in the 90s. And then there was also this cultural theory on smell and culture and those connections by David Howes and Constance Class. And so talking about maybe a little bit about this evolution, also explain at some point the difference between perfumery and aromatherapy, because both of these things came up in your last answer.
Yeah, well, they kind of, I'll start from the back, and aromatherapy and perfumery it kind of depends who you ask what the difference is and what the definition is. The aromatherapy in the broadest sense, if you look at the word aromatherapy, is using aroma therapeutically. So using aroma to achieve greater health, wellness, well-being. That is, if we look at the word itself, many people will add clinical aromatherapy to it, meaning using essential oils with clients in one-on-one kind of situation, kind of a practice. There are different kinds of aromatherapy, but if we look at aromatherapy, for me, it's about the intention. So are you intentionally using the aroma? Are you intentionally using the sense of smell? Are you intentionally using essential oils for healing purposes? Versus perfumery is more aesthetic, perhaps artistic endeavor, where it's more about the impact of the fragrance on your emotions, eliciting some reaction from, let's say, the audience, because when you use a perfume, you use it for yourself, but you also use it for others to somehow receive it. So that would be my personal distinction between aromatherapy and perfumery. As I said, you can ask many people, especially in the field of aromatherapy, and they might give you slightly different answer. And I do like to add qualificators to the aromatherapy, like clinical aromatherapy or essential oil therapy, when we kind of take the fragrance out of the equation and look more at the pharmacological properties. So I'm not even sure that could be strictly called aromatherapy, because it's more about the chemical makeup than it is about the aroma. In terms of the revolution that you talked about, the kind of 90s, everybody got into aromatherapy. I would think that, well, that's a bit more question for Robert, for my husband and and the founder of the Tisserand Institute, because he was there and he did publish the first book written in English on aromatherapy called The Art of Aromatherapy in the late 70s. But it took some time for it to percolate. So he really was there before it even was a thing properly. And he was trying to sell essential oils and persuade people that they are interesting. And somehow it took off a bit later, partly also because of the rise of the multi-level marketing companies. That created a huge boom in using essential oils in the late 90s, early 2000s, continuing to now. I'm not really aware of the cultural theory, but I wanted to talk about, well, it's a book that's based on a conference, which is called Perfumery, the Psychology and Biology of Fragrance, which is a conference that happened in 1988. I was 2 years old then. So I just know about it from Robert. That's a conference that happened in Warwick in the United Kingdom, and it brought together people from the perfumery world, but also people from the essential oil world, and kind of looked at fragrance and perfumery in that context of psychology and of the biological impact, to sort of going towards aromatherapy. So that's one kind of significant moment that I am aware of in that aspect. And we're seeing the same coming back now with many perfumery brands embracing the concept of aromatherapy and creating perfumes with proclaimed benefits for your well-being as well. I don't know if I answered the question or if you have any follow-up on this, but
do you have an example of a perfume that is being, I guess you could say, marketed as a well-being type?
Honestly, not from the top of my head, but just recently there was an industry mail out about one of the bigger fragrance suppliers having a mental focus fragrance developed that is available.
So yeah, so this difference between perfumery and aromatherapy, talked a little bit about that. And the Tisserand Institute prides itself on offering essential oil education that's well established and based on clinical research and taught by knowledgeable experts. So I feel like that I'm experiencing this in the courses currently, but I do know, and you kind of already touched on this, that people perceive aromatherapy in, I don't want to say a negative way, but in various ways. And even the way that the Tisserand website introduces itself is a little bit trying to dance around the word aromatherapy, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So some view the field as beneficial, alternative approaches to health and well-being, while others don't understand necessarily its effectivity. So I could understand how this is a very difficult place to be as being a reliable educational platform. So I wanted to know what your response on this is, and what you think about the spectrum of thought around aromatherapy.
Yes, it is. It is a delicate dance, but we like a challenge. We like a challenge. But yeah, you're right that on one hand we have people who are very skeptical of aromatherapy, whether it's because essential oils have become a trend, and you've got your high school friends popping up saying, "Hey, have you tried essential oils?" And they had got that reputation of being a part of snake oil or quack medicine, or just kind of, yeah, this is just some new age woo stuff and we don't want to even hear about it. I saw a meme just this morning that was, well, don't let children believe in Santa, you believe in your essential oils and no one's taking that away from you. So that's the kind of that's the sentiment on one hand, on one end. And on the other end, partly because of marketing, partly because of trying to sell a lot of essential oils, there are the companies that will make claims that are untrue, exaggerated, and are basically bad science reporting as well. So on the other hand, you'll have people who will tell you, yes, you can absolutely use essential oils for A, B, C, D, E, F, for anything from head lice to autism. They will cure your cancer, they will cure COVID. And so we're saying, okay, let's see where the facts are. Let's see where the benefits really are. And let's talk to both of these sides. It's not easy, because with the people who search for alternative medicine and complementary medicine are often people who have been either let down by the establishment, by the medical establishment, and I do not want to downplay that, or people who have that the medical establishment, the allopathic medicine has said, we've got nothing for you. We've tried everything. We're sorry, there's nothing else we can do. So people latch onto that hope, understandably, or there's people who are skeptical of the system, whatever the system represents for them, and they latch onto something else. So you can't really say, well, what you're saying is nonsense. You need to stop. You have to communicate in a way that says, okay, well, let's see where you can find help, where you can find more wellness and health and better life quality with essential oils, while also appreciating their limitations. And then when we're talking to the skeptics, we're trying to find common language. So if you're talking to a doctor, let's say we're talking to a dentist, right? Dentistry uses essential oils. Dentistry uses eugenol, which is a main constituent in clove essential oil. So if you want to talk to your dentist about essential oils, you say, hey, you already use them. You already use eugenol. It's a well-established component in your practice. And if you believe that works, well, let's have some conversation about what else works that we know that works. So it is an interesting space to be in, the space of kind of cautious optimism and healthy skepticism. But I think both myself and everybody who's teaching at the Tisserand Institute and working on making it what it is enjoys that space as well, because it's a genuine space. It's a genuine approach to essential oils. When you appreciate them for what they are, you appreciate them for what they can do for you, but you also acknowledge that they have their limitations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's always good to take both sides into consideration in everything that you do, right? Because both sides are very valid because they're there. So it's always good to be able to communicate with both sides. Since some terms have come up while we've been talking that our audience may not know, just if you could quickly explain maybe together what pharmacological effects are and what constituents are, and maybe give an example.
Okay, so essential oils are distilled volatile compounds of aromatic plants. So imagine your mint, let's say, or your basil that you have in your kitchen. If you rub the leaves, you get that smell. You get the smell of basil. Now, if you distill basil, you get the volatile compounds. Those are the molecules that are responsible for the smells. You get all of the volatile compounds from that plant. I'm simplifying a little bit, but that's what essential oils are. You collect the volatile compounds that are present in an aromatic plant, you distill them, you collect them, and what you have in your bottle of essential oil are these plant volatile molecules, and that is your essential oil. The essential oil is a collection of many different chemical constituents. It's not just one single constituent. If we have anyone listening who's from the perfumery world, you will be working with single chemicals. Sometimes you will be working with accords, which is a collection of more volatile chemicals. Well, essential oil is a collection of, let's say, on average, about 100 different chemicals. It varies. I think the highest number is somewhere around 300, but that's from the top of my head. And it's this collection of different proportions of these different volatile molecules that are responsible for the smell of the essential oil. So lavender smells like lavender because it has these different constituents in them. So it's kind of like a perfumery composition is already the essential. So that's a constituent. Now, these constituents are chemical molecules, and chemical molecules have the potential to interact with our bodies. Basically our bodies constantly interact with our environment, whether it's breathing, whether it's when we eat something, and some molecules interact in the pharmacological way, which means they will, if they get to our body in a high enough concentration and they get to the right place, they can exercise an effect on our body. Coming from allopathic medicine, you take a pain pill, that pain pill will interact with your body, will interact with the cells in your body, and will stop the pain, very simplistically saying. And since essential oils contain chemicals that have a potential of also having pharmacological effect on our bodies, that is what we're talking about. And we're discovering how that operates. We're discovering the mechanisms. We know some of them, many we don't know, and they very often act on different pathways, different ways at the same time. I hope I clarified that.
Yeah, well, that was a perfect summary. And of course, also, when you're working with essential oils, you not only can have that pharmacological effect, but you can also have the psychological effect. So if you smell something like lemon, for example, could make you feel your mood increase or make you feel happier. So there are these two different ways that essential oils can impact your system or your body, which I found very interesting when I was learning in the course.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing about essential oils. They work both, and you have the wonderful smells, and you also have the pharmacological effects. Very often they go together.
Yeah. So. Okay, so that's a great transition to our next question. So something that comes through very clearly while learning about the essential oils and what we just kind of covered is understanding the source, the chemical structure, and the therapeutic effects of each essential oil and the constituents, of course. I used to smell plants and foods and perfumes and just draw conclusions based on my memories or relate it to a source that it reminds me of, like, oh, that smells like strawberry, for example. But now I often actually think about essential oils for their individual chemical parts or their constituents, and how they can have a therapeutic or psychological effect. So I wanted to ask you, why do you think it's important for us to understand the chemical and molecular structure of essential oils, as well as their human and cultural impact?
This is really a wonderful question, and I was looking forward to diving deep into that. I think it's important to keep both sides. I think it's important to allow yourself to just smell and just experience things without intellectualizing them. Because I've witnessed that with Robert, who has been dealing with essential oils for 50 something years, that when we go to an experiential workshop, let's say, where you smell things and you're supposed to brainstorm how they make you feel, he's already thinking in terms of constituents and chemicals, and this is what I'm doing. So I think it's important to kind of consciously try to keep both sides, try to keep the, okay, right now I'm smelling some limonene and a little bit of something else, and also thinking, oh, this makes me feel light, and this makes me feel bright, and this makes me feel happy. I think it's important to keep both. That said, I think it's important to understand the tools that you're using, if you're using them. I personally am a very curious, I have a very curious mind, so I do want to understand pretty much everything. I want to know why things behave the way they behave. What makes essential oils volatile? What makes them so that if you put them in a little bowl over a candle, you will get your whole room smelling? What is it? Well, it's because the molecules are small. Okay, how small are they? What do they look like? What do these molecules look like? So that's coming from a perspective of someone who's just curious about things. But if you start using them, the chemistry of essential oils impacts many aspects of using essential oils in aromatherapy for yourself. It impacts the safety of essential oils. If you understand the chemistry, if you understand the makeup of an essential oil, you understand why you need to be cautious around a particular essential oil. It obviously impacts the therapeutic properties and whether we know what the therapeutic properties are of the oil, because there's a lot we don't know. And if you understand that, okay, we know about these constituents, can we extrapolate and say, okay, this essential oil will probably have this effect? It's really important in perfumery as well, because knowing about the chemical makeup will allow you to blend the essential oils better. You will know whether the essential oil is more of a top note or more of a base note, or where does it belong, and what, how you can perhaps recreate it if you need to. And it's also important for storing essential oils. If you understand that they're volatile and that they're prone to oxidize because of their chemical makeup, because of their nature, you understand how to keep them in a way that will make them last longer and be used up and not thrown away because they just went bad. So I think it's important when you use essential oils to understand the tool that you're using.
Yeah, I'm like you. I'm always very curious about things. So I guess that's why when I was taking, for example, the aromatic or the chemistry course in the Tisserand Institute, I was so shocked at how interesting it was, because I was thinking at first, oh, like chemistry. I did that in high school. Wasn't that fun? But then it was actually so beneficial because there are chemical reasons why lemon is a top note, or because it's because of its molecular structure. And that to me was just so mind-boggling, mind-blowing. And I was very excited because then I had this connection in my brain, like, okay, it's actually
now you know
for a reason. Yeah.
Now you know. Yeah.
Yeah,
Not to mention that Dr. Joy makes chemistry really fun, because she's a really great tutor, and she's really a wonderful personality. We very consciously didn't, because it is chemistry and because you need to deal with chemistry, very often we have the, oh, chemistry, yes, exactly like you. I had it in high school. Yeah, it was horrible. I just kind of suffered through the classes. And we just wanted to bring it in a way that you can relate to and that will spark that curiosity. So I'm glad that you
Yeah.
experienced that.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a very, like you said, you don't want to get too caught up on it, right? Because you still want to be able to enjoy just smelling and being also curious about smelling, which you can of course get better at. You can get better at smelling and making identifications. So it's always good to be open and not be stuck on this whole constituent thing, but it's also so beneficial to know this constituent relates to that, or etc., or even just the fact that like chemical makeups can impact perfumery, right?
Mm-hmm,
because you
mm-hmm.
have these different levels of the olfactory pyramid. So
absolutely.
it's actually
it's the two sides again. You've got the intellectual and the experiential as well. So
yeah. Why is it important to understand how our sense of smell works in the brain and the body, and why does it help us better understand the cultural importance of smells? And maybe also, like, smell has been pushed back a lot, right, throughout time, that it's that's not an important sense. So I wanted to maybe reflect a little bit on our actual function of our sense of smell and why it's important to know this.
This is a really interesting topic, and there are people who are much more equipped to talk about the history of the sense of smell, not in terms of its functioning, but in terms of how it was approached by philosophers, by scientists, by medical practitioners in history. And you're right, it was absolutely thought to be a sort of a lesser sense, a more so if we're thinking about the age of enlightenment, smell was taken as the more animalistic, more instinctual sense, not worthy of intellectual pursuit. I'm simplifying here, but that's kind of the general spirit. And that lasted pretty much until the 20th century. I was really amazed to learn that, and I don't have a citation for this, so I'm maybe getting this wrong, but I believe that Sigmund Freud was nose blind. He lost his sense of smell. So one of the foundation fathers of our modern psychology did not even account for his own sense of smell, which is mind-boggling if you know how smell works with our psyche. I'm very happy that there's a sort of a renaissance in the knowledge of our sense of smell and how important it is, because it is an incredibly important sense. Because it's the only sense that's sort of not filtered. So when we're looking at our eyesight, when we look at our hearing, there's always an intermediary that translates these sensorial input into our brain. With smell, we just, you inhale the molecules, and the nerve endings in your olfactory bulb signal directly to the brain, and it's immediate. It's got immediate impact. And it's our alert system very often. So it is a sense that we maybe don't think about because it is so immediate, and you don't think about it until you lose it. And basically, most of our taste comes from our smell. If you've lost your sense of smell, or if you maybe even temporarily, because you have a bad cold and your nose is all congested, you know that nothing tastes right because you lost that sense of smell. So it's an alert system. It's a huge part of how we experience food and how we experience taste. And it's just an incredible way to experience world in general, to experience the smellscapes of where you go, how places smell. And it's an incredibly powerful psychological tool, not just if you use it consciously, but I mean, there's a whole book written by Marcel Proust that's basically him riffing off on smelling a pastry, smelling a madeleine, and that brings a whole memory of everything that happened. And that does happen. That's happened to me. There's a wonderful project by Frauke Gallia called the Scent Tattoo, and she interviews people and asks them what their first smell memory is. What is the first smell that they consciously remember, and what is the story behind that smell? And it's anything from smelling gas in your parents' car going on a trip, to grandmother's cooking and a lot of onion being chopped, and all of these things that are ingrained in our brain because that was the olfactory input, that was the smell that we experienced. So it's a sense that enriches our lives as well as being important for our survival, because it alerts us to smoke, it alerts us to food going bad, etc., etc.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with all of those things. Do you want to share what your first smell memory is?
Well, I don't have a first smell. Well, the first smell memory, or the smell memory that I remember as being a smell memory, was actually almost a meta experience, because I was with my friend not too long ago, and she was using a cream on her baby, and it was a thyme cream, thyme as in the herb. And that smell immediately transported me to feeling kind of cuddled and wrapped around in a blanket. So that smell brought me to feeling kind of taken care of and covered in a blanket and being very soft and taken care of. And then I, a bit later, called my mom and said, "Mom, did we use anything that smelled like that when I was a child?" And she said, yeah, that's, we used this thyme cream from this company. It was the same thyme cream. This was about maybe 15, 20 years apart. First of all, the brand is very consistent in keeping the formulation the same, so the smell is the same. But that was a thyme cream that we used when I was, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old for coughs. And so smelling it with my friend triggered that memory back. And I thought, oh yeah, well, that's powerful.
Yeah, it's so incredible how that happens, right? Because it
Yeah.
happens, like, I can't tell you an exact memory or like what the first smell is. I couldn't tell you, but I'm sure if I was outside, walking around and you smell things, you're like, oh, that reminds me of something, right? So it's pretty amazing, that connection. That we make.
Like the hand cream your grandma used, that's a friend of mine said he needed to buy a candle in IKEA because it reminded him of the cream that his grandmother used when he was a boy. So it's these connections that happen through our sense of smell.
Yeah. Okay, so I wanted to focus on, for it's maybe a bit of the end of our podcast, but olfactory training used for anosmia.
Mm-hmm.
And on the last Internet of Senses podcast on the sense of smell, we talked about olfactory virtual reality, and how smells and olfaction can be exercised and used as a form of therapy and to work through forms of trauma. And similar to this, you wrote recently a blog post about olfactory training to assist anosmia. And this was a really great blog post.
Thank you.
And I wanted to take a portion of the interview to focus on it. And so firstly, can you explain, in case our audience doesn't know, what anosmia is and why it may occur?
So anosmia is a functional loss of your sense of smell. There are different etiologies of your sense of smell. So if we talk about normosmia, that's the normal functioning of sense of smell. There's a spectrum. There are tests that you can take to see where your sense of smell is. And the tests usually look at the threshold, meaning how strong a smell has to be for you to detect it, and identification and determination, meaning can you say what this smell is, and can you distinguish it from a different smell? So there's levels at which you have a normally functioning sense of smell, and if it decreases, you go to hyposmia, which means a diminished ability to smell. So you're not completely nose blind. You can still detect some smells, some odors, but it's not, it's diminished. And if you lose your sense of smell, meaning that you basically cannot detect any smells, any odors, that's when we call it anosmia, meaning you have lost your sense of smell. So it's functional loss of smell. It can happen from various reasons. It can happen because you suffered a trauma, meaning that the olfactory nerves have been severed and they no longer connect from your nose to your brain. This is usually irreversible. It can happen after an infection, which is very common, and it's much more common now because COVID-19, one of the symptoms is loss of smell, which brought anosmia much more to the forefront, and people are much more aware of that. Before that, it was very under researched. The numbers were underreported because doctors didn't know how to test for it, didn't know to ask for it, which is kind of a symptom of how we underappreciate the sense of smell in general. But COVID kind of silver linings, right? COVID brought this to the forefront. So now people are interested in anosmia and are interested more in finding ways to treat it. But most anosmics lost their sense of smell after a viral infection of the upper respiratory tract. Sometimes it's short term, sometimes it's much more longer term.
And is the reason why a lot of people have anosmia from COVID, is it because COVID really impacts the respiratory system?
Actually, with COVID, it's impacting the receptors in your olfactory bulb. It's not just the fact that you have sinus congestion and you have a lot of mucus in your nose, as is kind of common with any cold. If you have a runny nose, your sense of smell will be diminished, but this is different. I do not remember exactly the mechanisms, but Dr. Petra Taitz, one of our tutors, has made a short video about that. So we have that on the tisserandinstitute.org website. She explains the mechanisms, or as they're thought to be, but COVID seems to be attacking the olfactory receptors, actually, not just, it's not just the inflammation. It's the fact that it just kind of works with that too.
Yeah. And I've also read a couple of articles about COVID and the trigeminal nerve, right? Yeah. That it sets the trigeminal nerve, which is the part of our, I guess you could say, olfactory system that detects temperature. Mm-hmm. And that when some people who've had COVID actually constantly smell bad things, or they smell good things and it smells like fish or something like this. Yeah. And I've read that that's partly due also to trigeminal dysfunction. Could you say that?
Well, the trigeminal nerve is a part of, the technical term is chemosensory system. Yeah. So sensing chemicals, and trigeminal nerve is the one that will alert you to really bad stuff like ammonia or mustard, or, something that's really pungent and you need. So your alert system, that the olfactory system already is, your alert system needs to go to 1,000 immediately. It needs to go, abort, whatever you're doing, get away from here, because this thing is really bad. So yes, the impact is there. And what you mentioned, the distorted sense of smell, that is more of a symptom of the nerve damage, or of basically confusing the signals. And it's called parosmia, which is, you smell something, but it registers as something else. Unfortunately, most of the time it's something unpleasant. It's not like, it would be nice if it was the other way around, like you smell unpleasant things, but they smell like roses. But it just makes everything smell bad.
So can you summarize a bit of the research that you also talked about in your blog that has been done on olfactory training for olfactory dysfunction, and maybe at the same time talk about what olfactory training is? I don't think that we really covered that yet.
Olfactory training is what it sounds like. You're just training your nose to smell again, and it's basically intentional exposure to a limited set of odorants. So basically, the protocol that has been adopted based on the research is you have 4 different odorants. Either it's single molecules, or you're using essential oils. It's usually lemon, rose, eucalyptus, and clove, I think. And you smell these 4 odorants twice a day intentionally. So you take the bottles, intentionally inhale it, even if you can't smell it at the point. But you kind of you literally are training your nose. There are protocols that you can download. There are people you can work with that help you. It's usually a long-term process, kind of like any training. You won't see results immediately. You have to be consistent for at least 6 weeks, usually 8 weeks. And that's all based on research. The research on olfactory training was happening way before COVID. And it was based on, and I'm now blanking on the name of the scientist, but he was working with androstenone, which is a male hormone for animals that's used in artificial insemination. About half of humans are anosmic to this particular constituent, which means half of people can't smell androstenone. And this scientist was among those people who couldn't smell it, but he was working with it. And gradually he started noticing it, he started smelling it. So that was the first indication for the researcher saying, oh, well, wait a minute, you can retrain yourself to smell something that you were previously unable to. From there, Professor Hummel in the Dresden Institute for Olfactory Studies started looking into this and started saying, okay, well, can we see if we can help people with anosmia, because he was working with people with anosmia. Can we see if we can retrain them to regain their sense of smell? And fast forward 15 years of research, testing different protocols, testing different odorants to see if there's a difference, if we use this or that. We are now at a place where olfactory training is pretty much accepted as one of the ways to treat anosmia with the accepted protocol, which is either the 4 single constituents or you're using essential oils. And I don't think it would be the case if COVID didn't happen and if anosmia wasn't such a big thing with COVID, but it was happening nevertheless. When I started working on the article, the first research paper that I read was actually about neuroplasticity, meaning you are recreating connections in your brain between neurons through smell training. So that was, I kind of dove in the deep end, looking at functional MRI scans, looking at the brain, saying, okay, so this person was anosmic. When they were smelling things, the brain didn't light up the way it was supposed to. After smell training, we're seeing the connections being rewired, reconnected. And I thought, wow, that's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. Yeah. And kind of back from there, okay, well, there's something here. And it's the whole research is fascinating. I don't know if we could link to the blog post, not just because I want you to read my blog post, but there are links to really fascinating research on smell training.
Yeah, and the other thing about the blog post is it also talks about all the different forms of anosmia. I mean, there are so many different forms and so many different symptoms, and so it's also it was for me very important to read, because I only knew the word anosmia pretty much, and so to be able to read about all those the different types, and also just the fact that there's still not that much research on it, right? That we still have so much more more to learn. And actually, the olfactory training really inspired me, because I have a friend who had COVID for the 3rd time. And the first time she had COVID, she was quite affected by it and lost her sense of smell, but only for bad smells.
Lucky her.
Yeah, kind of. But she's like, yeah, I just can't tell if things are rotten or something. You know, it is still quite strange for her. But the third time she had COVID, she had form of anosmia so bad that she was constantly smelling one bad smell all the time, and it was making her very, very sick. And of course, the doctors didn't know what to do or how to help her. And so she was talking to me about it, and I said, oh, well, you know, there's this olfactory training you can do. And so I brought her the 4 essential oils that you named. Was it lemon, clove, eucalyptus, and rose?
Yeah.
And just a few reflections from doing this with her, because she was at the time she thought she had lost her sense of smell, but actually she smelled them, and a few of them she could identify. Or she could really reflect on it. And she said a couple of days later, she actually didn't have the problem anymore because she was doing this twice a day, I told her. And so that was really, really cool to see, and also to understand why these 4 scents were chosen, because she knew them. You know, we don't always have an easy time identifying smells, but these 4 smells, people know them. And can say them. Like, people can say, oh, that's eucalyptus.
That's clove. Yeah, you can. The reason they were chosen is actually based on an early 20th century perfumery researcher, and I don't remember his name right now, who introduced, like, we have the color prism. He introduced a fragrance prism, and it had so the selection was from pungent, floral, herbaceous, and citrusy, I think. Again, I would have to check that, but there was a logic there. But I think it's also the fact that those are familiar smells, so you kind of think about what it is in your call it the sort of the memory book in your brain for that smell. You know, I kind of remember what clove smells like. I kind of know what I'm supposed to be smelling. And I heard of a person who retrained himself to hear. He lost his hearing. That's a different sense. But he knew that he was going to lose his hearing. So he was intentionally learning music, songs that he would listen. And then he got an implant to restore his sense of hearing, and he was listening to the same songs, so he knew what he was supposed to hear, and that helped him. And it's kind of similar with the scents. You kind of know what you're supposed to be smelling. Very happy to hear that your friend is feeling better, because it's losing sense of smell or having a distorted sense of smell really is impactful. And then we said that, you know, it's kind of a great smell to a great sense to have, but it's linked to depression as well. You know, if you lose your sense of smell, it will lead to depression. It will lead to you not being able to enjoy life to its max because you can't taste things. Then there's social anxiety because you can't smell your own body odor, so you won't go out, or you will wash too much because you're just paranoid about smelling. If you have a little baby, you will be also paranoid about changing the diaper soon enough. And so there's a lot of anxiety and a lot of diminished enjoyment of life linked to that. So I'm very happy that your friend was able to overcome that with smell training.
Yeah. I like this idea that you know what's coming, so it helps you improve in a way. Okay, so to conclude, I'll ask you the last question, which is, it could be, and I'm going to ask everybody on the podcast this question. So Erin was also asked this question. It could be the industry, or it could simply be a world where we learn to value our sense of smell more. But I want to know from you, what is the future of the smell industry?
Wow. The future of the smell industry. I hope for society as a whole, I hope that we are we will become more aware of our sense of smell, and we will become more aware of the smellscapes around us, and kind of be more mindful of the smellscapes we're creating for other people as well as for ourselves. In terms of industry, there are great challenges with sustainability, with climate change, and with the popularity of both essential oils and perfumes in general. So for the industry, I would like the industry to become a bit more conscious about the resources we're using, and be more, just like for people to be more mindful of our sense of smell in general, I would like to see the industry to be more mindful of how we're using the tools that we're using and what impact that use has. So that's more of a wish than a prediction of the future.
Thank you for talking with me today, and it was really really amazing to hear about the Tisserand Institute and what you're all doing, what you and your team are doing, and I am excited to keep following your work and also continue my courses.
Thank you so much. It was really wonderful talking to you, and I really enjoyed talking about all these topics. Thank you so much.
Thank you.